on Froggy. The microphone just, like...
Yeah, I mean, I have it loud enough so it's gonna, like, you don't have to be, like, in it. Okay. It's gonna pick you up regardless. Perfect. Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, so we're here. So, first of all, tell me about your involvement in the Miss America organization and who you are.
So, I'm Rebecca Gasperetti. I started with the Miss America organization in 2016 as Miss Milford. I had a pretty long history with pageants in general. I started with the National American Miss System, took a break, and then I heard about the scholarships that are involved in the Miss America system.
What kind of scholarships are those?
So academic scholarships towards high school or college or student loans. And that used to range from anywhere from talent scholarships to academic scholarships. And of course, before it was the swimsuit scholarship and evening gown scholarship. But the scholarships definitely were dependent upon the organization from state to state. So different states within that organization had different scholarships available.
Okay, cool. And so, are you still competing now?
I unfortunately aged out.
Okay, so then what's
26.
Like, for anybody who just doesn't know, so 26.
26 is the cutoff.
Okay.
No, 25 is the cutoff. I'm sorry, 25 is the age cutoff. It used to be 24, and then they increased it. 2 years ago they increased it, and now it is 25. But the teens go from 13 to 18, and then 18 to 25 would be the Miss division.
Okay, dope. So now for me, I'm sort of involved in this world a little bit just because I grew up knowing girls who were like in pageants, Kayla Martell and like Galen Giacone, Brittany Dempsey. So I kind of grew up going to school with girls who were like in pageants, and then I want to say maybe like 2012, Kayla, she was in a music video of mine. So we did like this, we did this song called Who Is This Girl? It's a music video. We were raising money for the Pierce Q Foundation, which was a pediatric cancer foundation. And she was like kind of in the video. She had alopecia. That was like a big thing. She was on like Good Morning America or like USA Today, kind of doing that whole thing, talking about people who have cancer and how it affects people, or like if you don't have hair. And so it's kind of like her platform, right? Because everybody kind of has a different platform. And she'd asked me if I would get involved with the Mr. Delaware thing. So so in 2012 I was like Mr. Delaware.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And that's how I kind of got into that world. And then just like this past year, ended up had the honor of judging for Miss Delaware's Outstanding Teen.
Which was amazing, by the way. Thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you very much. I'm kind of involved in this world. I think that it's a dope thing for young girls to be able to have opportunities to not only just showcase their talent, but just have a platform in which they can just say like, hey, look, I'm here, this is who I am, these are the things that I can do, and kind of get an opportunity to do something that's not exactly just sports, or where kind of your intellect also can get a spotlight. Be like, hey, just because I'm a girl does not mean that I'm not capable of doing all these other things. Like for the Miss Delaware's Outstanding Teen who won, Jacqueline Means, her platform was like STEM, like girls in science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
And so she is absolutely flying now too.
So I'm like, that's a dope platform. But I had you here because you were speaking about something that kind of went down today. So you want to talk to me about what that was?
Yes. Okay. So I heard recently that there was an article that emerged for the Miss America 2.0 organization introducing this new scholarship that they have. But unfortunately, the way that the article was worded triggered some anger and some fiery remarks from former Miss contestants as well as state title holders and previous Miss America title holders. And basically what it was the donor for the scholarship, her parents did not want her to join Miss America at the time in the 80s because of the swimsuit competition. And there was a comment that was made saying that Miss America, quote, Miss America does not look like us. Intelligent women or educated women do not parade on the stage in bikinis.
Right.
And from that, all of this emerged with the posts now saying that we can parade in whatever we want, or saying that just because you're wearing a bikini on stage doesn't mean you are less educated. And I do understand that, and I get the frustration with how that the article was worded, but I think that the main point of the article was completely missed because of the way it was worded.
So, in your opinion, what do you think the main point of the article was?
In my opinion, I think that Miss America 2.0 is truly trying to expand and try a different form of competition and a different, I guess, culture. They're trying to change their culture a little bit by removing the Miss America swimsuit competition, but at the same time promoting and developing more scholarship opportunities.
Gotcha. Well, don't you think it's kind of in playing a little devil's advocate here?
Yeah.
And that's really just because I want to get to
yeah.
the source. Like, if they're changing their culture,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't that kind of imply that something about that culture was perceived to be wrong to begin with, if it needed to be changed?
So that is a very good point. And from being a part of the organization for only 3 years, I couldn't really tell you exactly where the issues truly lied, but from what I've seen, they were concerned about the swimsuit competition degrading young women.
Okay.
And keeping other women who may not be comfortable in a swimsuit from competing for those scholarships in the Miss America organization, which I do understand. I also understand the frustration for those who do like the swimsuit competition, which I was one of them. I love the swimsuit competition. I was mortified in 2016 when I first stepped on stage in a bikini and heels. Not only did I trip on stage, but but I was a little bit embarrassed because of my size. However, as the years progressed, I developed this dedication to health and to showing the best possible version of myself on stage year after year. Not everyone has that perception of things, and not everyone goes about that in the same way in preparations. So I think it's fair to say that the mixed emotion about the swimsuit competition will always be there. But now that it's gone, more people are angry, which I still don't understand. But
So you think that more people are upset that the swimsuit competition has been taken away and they would rather see it return? Now, when you say more people are upset, you mean like actual contestants?
I think, actual contestants are more angered than the audience watching Miss America.
And why do you believe that is? And maybe just from even your own personal experience, because I know you can't speak for everybody.
I was upset at first because it's something that I was preparing for a very long time. And naturally, you're excited when you are working towards something, and it takes years to accomplish, and then having it pulled away from you. And I know that a lot of the Miss America competitors from last year, when Miss Delaware 2018 Joanna Wicks was Miss Delaware, competed for Miss America. That was the first time that they did not have the national swimsuit competition.
Okay.
So I know that there were also
So wait, did she compete at, sorry to interrupt, but did she compete with a swimsuit with that element in the state competition, and then
yes,
it was
and
not
then it
in
was
the...
not in the competition for Miss America.
So if you scored well in that
exactly
thing in the state level, and you're like, okay, this is a strength that I'm going to bring with me to the national competition, and now
and then
you
it's
don't have
pulled away
that.
from you, and yeah, so that I could only imagine how frustrating it was for a lot of the girls. I think now that we're talking about it more, I think the frustration truly stems regardless of it already being out of competition, like there is no more swimsuit competition in Miss America, but it's still being bashed.
Okay.
So I think that the feelings are stemming from the frustrations of how a woman in a swimsuit on a stage in heels it was perceived. And I think that is also understandable, but I also do think that it's time to move on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so in that quote, you mentioned that it was from like the 80s. Do you think that the swimsuit competition in the 80s may have been a different environment and culture than the swimsuit element maybe like mid 2000s, 2010?
That I couldn't really speak on, but I would imagine, because swimsuits for the Miss America organization started out as the one piece and then evolved into a two piece and then further involved into whatever choice you wanted to make, whether you wanted to wear a one piece or a two piece, that option was yours. I just think that the comment made in the article is being misconstrued as something that the Miss America organization said for themselves.
Right, but it's a comment made by someone.
The parents
right.
of a girl in the 80s when she wanted to compete in 1980s, I believe the article said.
But it's their money and it's their scholarship, so they kind of have a right to say whatever they want to say.
Yeah, exactly.
But they never said that like they were taking away the scholarship or anything like that, right?
No.
Okay, so that's cool.
I think maybe Miss America 2.0 didn't need to include that comment, but maybe they did for a reason. So I don't want to.
Yeah, it's like I feel like it's like to me it's a rather perplexing issue because I definitely see both sides of it. I see how you can if you're on the side of like, hey, I think that it should be taken away. I'm curious rather, is it like, well, do you think that it should be taken away because you're wrapped up in the perception of, let's like use that comment, right, about like, well, educated women aren't like parading around in a swimsuit, which for me, like, I'm trying to look at that objectively and just say, well, that must come from a perception of like value being tied into physical beauty, which to some degree, I suppose that's maybe what the organization was going to, right? Like there is a value, you get rated on it, right? There is this value on what your physique looks like. And someone's going to say, well, this person's physique is better than this other person's physique, and that's a value assessment. And maybe you don't want to kind of be boxed in that same way. But I don't see how that necessarily ties to intellect. I don't think what you look like has anything to do with what your intellect is.
Right.
And regardless, it's a choice, right? Like at the end of the day, you can choose to compete in the competition or you can choose to not compete in the competition. And if it has certain rules, then you're kind of opting in to say, I want to follow those rules in order to compete in this particular competition. That to me kind of says that you're more tied into the perception more than what it actually means to you, which I guess can kind of be a confusing thing. Are there like a lot of male judges for these competitions?
So what I have seen through my experience, it's a good mix. The judges' chair usually tries their best to bring in both men and women into the judges' field to promote more of like a diverse judging group, to, I guess, stray away from bias. In my experience too, haven't had a full judges' chair with men. It's always been men and women, yeah.
See, now all that to me is also curious too. Or like, well, not like a curious situation. It's just like, I see where the argument could be made that like, okay, now I don't know. So I'm prefacing by saying I don't know. Maybe perhaps in the 80s there were more male judges than, let's fast forward 30 years than like the current time. Maybe it's more diverse now, but maybe back then there was kind of male dominated in terms of judging. So it could seem like very sexist. Like, oh, well, this woman is attractive in a particular culture or group's set of beauty standards. And it's like, if you comply, to that subset of beauty standards, then yes, this is what we want. This is the image of what we want a Miss of America to look like. So I could kind of understand those remarks if that is the case. I guess what it makes me think about is then, even though if you do add female judges, if they have the same ideology as male judges, then you don't escape anything by adding female judges, because then you just have women who are going to use the same lens to judge everything through also. But I guess as a contestant, did you ever feel like, if I'm quote unquote overweight, or if I'm quote unquote like not the ideal Miss Pageant beauty standard, am I not going to do well in this competition? Like, how do you think it's judged? Is it judged kind of like a fitness competition, or is it judged really like kind of like a subjective, this is what I find attractive?
It is supposed to be judged objectively. I have never seen the scoring chart of a judge for a contestant, but I'm always led to believe that there will always be a subjective aspect to any competition, whether it's a pageant, even whether if it's a bodybuilding competition, it's very subjective and based on that person's opinion. No matter how hard you try to follow that rule book, you will always be led to think about and consider what you find more attractive, whether it's something having to do with that woman's looks or personality, or the way she walks or the way she talks. So ultimately, I really do think it's a very subjective competition.
Right.
And with that being said, before any woman before any young leader decides to compete for Miss America or Miss USA or any pageant, they have to consider who they are first, and if they are comfortable within their own body. Because I know that when I first started competing for MAO, Miss America, I wasn't as confident as I am now, I would like to think, but I came to accept who I was, and I accept what I looked like, and I just had fun. And it's a very cliche statement that you will hear all around the pageant world. You have to be you, and you have to be true to you. Because if you aren't true to you, and articles like this emerge, and comments like that emerge, you'll immediately start to see lashes in social media arising, and the confidence of young ladies decreasing.
Okay.
So, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it kind of does. I mean, it makes me curious about, like, you said a lot of people who are contestants, people who have competed, are kind of like, oh, no, like, the swimsuit, they like that.
They like it.
What pushed the change? It must have been a group of women that said, like, hey, this is discriminatory to some degree. From that perspective, where do you think that came from?
I think it was also, so I would have to review some articles to give you a more thorough answer, but I really do think that it was because of the Me Too movement. And Gretchen Carlson, when she was still chair of Miss America, decided that from her previous experiences, as well as those former Miss Americas who were subjected to criticism and to sexism, decided that the swimsuit competition was not needed and just promoted a dangerous environment for young women. And that was their opinion. Obviously, other women thought otherwise. But I really do think that it stems from the events that have been happening in today's society, as does everything.
Now, do you think those are events that happen in today's society, or that those are events that have happened, period, and today's society has just let it be more public? Like, people now have a voice and a platform
now people are speaking out to it. And to, again, play devil's advocate on my previous statement, this article may have been misconstrued, but I think it really was for a good reason, because now women are coming out saying that, okay, yeah, the scholarships are great, but do you recognize what you just said? You're pretty much saying that any woman in a swimsuit, even whether if it's at the beach, is not educated.
Right.
So this goes to show that, and I even posted on my Instagram as soon as this came out, that you really have to be careful with what you say and think before you speak. Whether it was the person writing the article or whether it's someone who's posting on Instagram in response to that. Yes, speak your mind, but also be cognizant and aware of those around you.
Right.
Because,
all of that is so, there's so much gray area in all of this, because I'm 100% for, like, wear what you want to wear, be who you are, and, like, it doesn't matter what people think necessarily, but people will think something. That is a thing. Now, whether it affects you or whether you care about it, it's a different story, but it's sort of like, yes, if you're out on the beach and you're wearing a swimsuit, that's totally fine, right? Like, most people aren't going to judge you. Most people. But there are still going to be people out of the beach who are women or men who are probably going to be like, that person shouldn't wear that, because maybe that bikini is like a smaller cut. Maybe it's a thong bikini or something, or maybe, and it's like, oh, well, that's inappropriate. It's like, inappropriate by whose standards? What are we judging at this point? But why is it okay to wear a thong bikini at a beach? But if you were out in public and you went out and you had on, like, let's say you were just out in public wearing a thong, it's like, oh, that's inappropriate. That's not okay. Yeah. It's like, wait, it's the same exact thing. Now what you've done is you just contextualize an environment to determine who a person is and, like, what's appropriate in an environment. All of that stuff to me is kind of weird. I understand it just like being a black male, right? Like, in terms of, like, comparison, there are certain things as a black male, right? Like, there was, like, the hoodie thing about, like, oh, like, black men can't wear hoodies because then it's like, oh, you're a hoodlum, you're a thug, so it's like, oh, well, no, I'm just wearing a hoodie and maybe it's cold, or that's just what I want to wear, that's me. It doesn't matter why I'm wearing it, it's what I want to wear. Why are you so concerned? Why are you judging me based off of what I have on? But people are going to judge you based on what you have on. Just same thing it is, like, with your speech and vernacular, right? Like, if you speak a certain type of way, there are probably different environments in which it's okay to use certain types of language and other environments where it's not. To me, it's peculiar that in a competition setting where you are going to be judged based on what you're wearing, and you know this going in, that you could feel like this isn't right, this isn't fair. Because at what point then, and again, I'm playing a little devil's advocate, but at what point do you say, oh, well, because I'm from a southern state and the Cockney that we use down here, even though it's still English, may be a little slower. Maybe there's a different diphthong and inflection in the intonation that we use for certain words. Now if you have a northern judge, are they going to perceive your intellect as less because the way that you speak is different than the way someone else is? So now are you saying, oh, well, now I don't want to have certain types of interviews because the way I speak will get judged, and now I'm being discriminated against because of how I speak. Now if all of the judges come from, like, a liberal type of mindset, let's say American society in general, let's say that the baseline was, like, incredibly liberal, and then you come from really conservative viewpoints. If you answer a question in a conservative manner, because it is a subjective type of thing, is someone then judging you based off of, like, oh, well, I don't necessarily agree with that mindset? Like, I know as a judge you're not supposed to, but to piggyback off what you said, you will, right? Like, so at that point I'm like, where do you kind of draw the lines in saying, like, this, it's a judged based kind of competition, I guess I'm more on the side that says you should be able to wear what you want to wear. You should be able to say what you want to say and speak how you want to speak, and not be subjected to like people bashing you necessarily because they don't agree with how you choose to present yourself. But I suppose that may not conform to what the organization is trying to produce as a product.
So I really do think it comes down on both ends, both as a judge and as a competitor. It comes down to self-awareness, because we are in a world, and the world has been this from the beginning of time, where people come from different backgrounds, cultures, different walks of life, and because of that, we are made to form these perceptions based on what we've learned from our parents, based on the people that we've hung out with. Even now, I think it's considerably worse because of social media and what we see, and what social media perceives to be the perfect image, or the perfect background, or the perfect way to talk, or the perfect way to walk or act. We have to be aware, for example, if I'm a judge, yes, I have my standards and I have my opinions, but the question that I would like judges to start asking themselves is, if I were in this woman's shoes, how would I feel? How would I react? More often than not, judges, I think, sometimes come into the picture and think about, what do I want to see, rather than what would everyone benefit from. And step aside from a woman in a dress, or a woman in a bikini, or even a woman in her talent outfit, and see the person for who she is. And I don't know if that'll ever happen, unfortunately, but as long as we start being self-aware in our everyday life, and consider, what hurts me? Will that hurt me if I were to say something about that contestant, or if they were to say that about me? What would it be like if I was walking on that stage? I just think that sometimes judges walk into a pageant thinking that, oh, I'm the judge, so I have control over everything. And yeah, they do to an extent, but they have to realize what that reason is.
Right. But I totally agree with you with that. As a contestant, do you feel like the parameters in which you need to compete in, do you think that those need to be like maybe broadened a little bit? Like, for what reason is it like evening gown, but it's not like, I don't know, loungewear? Or why can't you wear a pantsuit?
So now, actually, for the Miss America system, there is a phase of competition. I think it's called red carpet, where you can wear whatever you want.
That's sweet.
So you could wear a pantsuit, you could wear a jumpsuit, and you make a personal statement. Or I think it's called an impact statement now. They still have the evening gown, but in place of swimsuit, they have that impact statement red carpet opportunity, which I think is a great opportunity for these young women to express themselves in a different type of way.
More like a unique way?
Yeah.
And less of in the box kind of packaged way?
Exactly, where they can walk out with whatever they want that expresses their personality. I also think that, going back to that previous question with the evening gown, why evening gown? Back when Miss America was established, we were under this impression that a Miss America, which I still agree with, is this classic young lady who is eloquent, elegant, and also talented. And because of the swimsuit competition, athletic. So I guess we were always hooked on that element of an all-American woman, I guess you can say, or the archaic saying of all-American woman.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah, I mean, I get the ideology.
Yeah.
I can see how some people would be frustrated, when it's like softball players, professional softball players, are ridiculous athletes. They don't necessarily have the same bodies as like a swimsuit model.
Exactly.
You know, but so I can see how someone would make the argument, well then how does that determine athleticism? Or elegant and eloquence, what is that like based off of some like Victorian ideal?
Well,
like,
yeah,
you know, which then I
that's...
can understand the argument in that article, which is like, to quote it, like doesn't look like us, right? Because then it's like you're definitely zoning in on a specific type of individual and appearance when you're saying that, because elegance and eloquence has a whole bunch of different looks, quote unquote looks, in a lot of different subsets and cultures. Like that thing in to say like Southern Belle, right? The idea that comes in your mind when you say like Southern Belle is probably going to be different than, you know, someone who's maybe in Massachusetts, which still might be different than someone who's in California, which might be different than someone who's in Arkansas. Like, just because the cultures in each area are so different. So to try to find this, like, uniformity, and I get it, it's like America, right?
Yeah.
So you want this thing of America, not each individual state. But I can see where that could probably cause some frustration, especially if you're in a state that maybe is, like, predominantly Hispanic, right? Where it's like your cultural identity does not necessarily conform to any of those like Victorian ideas.
And that's another reason why the swimsuit competition probably has been thrown out of the phases, because they wanted to adapt to America as a whole as opposed to those subsections.
Right.
And if we go back to what that individual had said, they said Miss America doesn't look like us. So I guess Miss America 2.0 took that and made it so that they do.
Right. So you're on the mindset of like, let's not bash progress.
Yeah,
like the act is trying to be progressive.
Yeah.
So let's not beat anybody up for trying to do better.
Because this is where all of, well, in my opinion, this is where a lot of issues stem from. Bullying stems from not being progressive. Taking somebody who's maybe different than you and making fun of them for something. And I think, in a sense, we are pretty much bullying Miss America 2.0 for trying to make some sort of a difference. And I urge those young leaders, the future Miss America or the future Miss Delaware, well, actually the new Miss Delaware and future Miss Delawares, to be more accepting, to maybe play devil's advocate against their own opinion. Because if we continue this path of fighting, and going against what someone else is trying to improve upon, it's just going to cause a lot of havoc.
Right, it's just kind of like this circular backwards type of motion.
We're going to go into this rotating door era again, which, I mean, still are, but...
Right, but at least it's still moving forward.
It's still moving forward,
right.
Yeah. And that's the most important thing that I'm trying to convince my followers on Instagram and Facebook to accept.
Dope. Well, I want to thank you for coming on and speaking your mind about this great topic. Where can people find you or follow you if they want to hear more about you or see what you're doing?
Well, you can follow me on Becca Maria on Facebook. Or you could follow me on, oh my goodness, you know what? Let me pull up my Instagram because I always forget my handle.
It's great. I'm going to post a link to your page.
Okay, that's perfect. So you could even just find me.
And I'll post a link to that article as well, so anybody who wants to read it, they'll be able to take a look at it. So yeah, if you enjoyed this conversation or you have any feedback on anything, please feel free to write. I would love to hear what you guys think and what you have to say about it. I'll catch you next time.
Damn, okay. Oh, man.
You did great.
Thanks.